Hello, everyone, and welcome to our most recent coaching interview, the VAED, the Voice Actors Education Document. And we have a special one for you today. We've employed necromantic magics to dredge forth from the crypt itself. Brendan Hunter. Brendan, if your mortal coil still lingers, how are you?
For the moment, I am near. Hello, Robert. So nice to see you again. So I'm just having a little fire in my booth. It's Canada, after all. It's rustic here.
It's how you sound warm on mic. Makes sense to me.
Yeah, just warm it up. Put a little fire in your booth. Make sure you got ventilation.
Thank you, Brendan, for being here. I always appreciate the humor that you bring, the levity and play that you bring to it.
Well, it's a very serious business, and you should always be serious and never have fun. Voice acting.
It's not voice fun, it's voice. Anyway, we're going to get
Work?
started. Voice work. Ooh, I would like voice work, please.
It's not voice fun, it's voice work. Get to work.
Give us 5-10 years, that's what it's going to be. But now that downer's out of the way, Brendan, if you are ready, I have to give these people the answers to your questions, but to invert that for a second and give you my questions to receive your answers. If you're ready to get started with our coaching interview.
I have moments left on your mortal plane. Let's try.
Very well, then. Thank you for your time spent. Brendan, now that we've got you back from the grave, what is it that, in the first place, had you taking up coaching for voiceover specifically?
I found that the coaching aspect was a byproduct of trying to be a better voice actor. I started approaching conventions and seeing if the credits I had were meaningful enough to perhaps be a guest, or I think I volunteered for a few conventions in my own country and province for a couple of years, just kind of testing the waters. And what I was noticing was that it was really quite nice to be the local VA, and that people really were having a relationship with the idea of being a voice actor themselves that they'd never really considered. They'd been told you have to go somewhere else, you have to be someone else. And here they were seeing a neighbor of theirs who was, you know, kind of just like them. You know, I'm me, but I'm their I'm their colleague, I'm their peer. I live here too, and I was doing what they thought was really interesting. And so a lot of my panels and the types of Q&A and interviews that people wanted to do when I was guesting at conventions was, how do I do it too? Basically, how can I be a voice actor? And so I started a long-running series called So You Want to Be a Voice Actor? And that panel was really helpful because it really focused the questions and the conversation, and it was meant to be a conversation. Sometimes you'll go to a panel and it's more like a lecture. I don't really love that, but I know that sometimes you have to get a certain amount of information out. So the idea that these panels could really help demystify the industry for people, empower them to start on their own journey in their own way without having to wait for an agent to tell them that they're good, or without having to get a booking to be able to start to say things like, I am a voice actor. I thought that was really a lovely relationship. And pretty soon that relationship blossomed into people saying, can we do some voice acting? Like, how would I get started? I said, I think we could. I know engineers, I know studios. We could probably look at renting the space, and we did. And we'd start to have these great in-person sessions for about 8 people just to keep it nice and quick. And everybody would play for 3 hours on microphone, and we'd record it and give them the files, and it was glorious. And so for years, maybe 5 or 6 years, I was doing that. And when I would tour, I would try to put one in on the city that I was going to, and I'd learn the new scene, and I'd bring those locals to their local studio, and I'd give them an experience that they didn't know how to get anywhere else. And then Casting Call Club and Closing Credits asked me if I would consider doing it online. And I kind of hesitantly said, I guess, but I don't think it's going to work. And lo and behold, it has not just worked, but when COVID hit, it enabled us to connect all over the world really effectively. We grew a community of hundreds, maybe thousands of VAs that are at various levels of their career, but all were able to move their career forward. And I was so honored to be the instructor that many of them were able to glean from, because I think for me as a coach, teaching it reinforced how much you do have to learn, how much you do go through, how much change does occur in a person over the years of getting good at something. We talk about the 10,000 hour rule for any mastery. budget for 10,000 hours. Is that accomplishable in 1 year? No. But even if you put 10 hours a day in for a year, you're about a third of the way there. And that's kind of daunting. And yet, it's kind of inspiring that you're not supposed to get to the end. But in the accumulation of years and maybe decades of even casual work and attention and growth of yourself and your own self-image and your own self-talk, you're going to improve and improve and improve and find plateaus along the way to look at how far you've come and then look at the new peaks that you want to scale and set out for those as well. And coaching has reminded me that the artist really does continue to grow and learn, and that reflection through teaching has been extremely meaningful for me and apparently quite helpful for students that get a really unvarnished and honest approach to, yeah, you do the work, but you also get to know yourself and you get to express yourself better and you get to become the you that you've been waiting to become. And that's an incredible honor to be allowed to help people do.
That's incredible, Brendan. When you're to pull some of it out of it, when you were mentioning the 10,000 hours, it reminded me of something else. Another coach has taught me was we're not even allowed to start worrying about if we sound good or any of that until we've been in this for like 20 years, is what she said. She said, don't worry about it. You don't have the right to worry about if you're bad or not. You can do that after you've been here for 2 decades. And I'm like, oh man, yeah, okay, sure. If I got that much time, why not?
Yeah. And it's there's something about that, like stumbling through your career. Who would be perfect anyways? What would be even fun about being perfect? The learning is the challenge. The excitement is that you own the mistakes eventually. And I've said this in class too, like you stand on top of all of your mistakes and you own them. And they become a platform for you. They become a way to get your head above water and to start to really be able to take stock of what you can do now. It's not this like, what if I could do it? It's like, no, I look at all the mistakes I made. I'm on my way. I'm better than I've ever been because I kept trying. And the trying is everything. The success is a byproduct of continuing to try.
Earlier when you were talking about how you're getting started, you were mentioning the cons that you've gone to or the conventions, and it had me thinking, I know you from anime, but I also understand that you do more than just anime. So I wanted to ask you, could you elaborate on what aspect of voice training you've chosen to specialize in, if any? And if there's anything more you can elaborate on with that?
Yeah, I mean, I certainly started with commercials and character work like a lot of VAs do. And so I was going out for like the local car dealership ads and, electricity and, media providers and things like that. And so that was all, very normal. You'd go in, you'd, read a bit of copy and a bit of script and, it's 30 seconds. It's all fine. But what really kind of lit the fire for me was, being able to be enlisted to help dub anime that was coming to Canada in the early 2000s and was going on our TV stations and was going to the UK and Australia, New Zealand, and kind of like the colony, English colony countries. And as a young actor, I poured myself into the workshops to really work into characters and to really play and get better at playing. And I think it might be relatable to a lot of young adults where they have a great disconnect with play. And it's really hard to be an adult and encouraged to play, and especially encouraged to be emotional. That's something that is, often looked down upon. People ask you to be less than because it's uncomfortable for them. And you're like, okay, every young adult wants to feel safe. They want to succeed. They conform or they lessen their lumens so that they will hopefully be able to navigate this strange thing of adulthood. So the workshops, often they'd be a weekend workshop. You'd go in for hours each day and you would be encouraged to be wild and weird and loud and expressive. And all of a sudden, the body starts to remember that this is how it was. This is what childhood was. The baby comes out and it cries and it giggles and it screams and it is in awe of the world. And we get tamped down. We get tempered by life. But I was a playful kid. I was LARPing on the school grounds, acting out my favorite scenes. I was doing homages to my favorite voices. I was trying to learn how to express myself the way I loved the characters that I loved expressed themselves. And then, and then it becomes, well, it's only safe to do that on the stage. It's only safe to do that in front of a camera. And so you conform because you want to succeed. But being an adult who's allowed to play and being an adult who's allowed to share play with other adults, it has given me such a gift. And I'm a parent, I'm a father, and I still feel like I don't play enough. I still get so serious. But I think humans are meant to sing and dance and play. Humans are just meant to express themselves. So if you live in the gray doldrums of a life that is telling you not to, just remind yourself, maybe you can't do it there, but you deserve to do it somewhere. And hopefully you'll find either your people or your place to do it, because the body desperately needs to. And the mind will also benefit so much by being allowed to experience and process the earth the way it was born to do, not in these confines of a cubicle.
It's ironic that despite putting ourselves in a sort of cubicle,
I
we
know.
nonetheless get to play more than maybe anyone outside of these cubicles cares to do or feels safe to do. That's
that
an
door
irony there.
Yeah, and you're right, because it's only like a 3x3 foot booth. I close the solid core door and it becomes like the holodeck, right? I can let go of these four walls, because what they've done is they've cocooned me in a safety of imagination, of expression. Sometimes I get so loud that my family can still hear me, and I'm always just a little embarrassed by that, because I would love, I think, to have an unbridled expression. And, very few of us get those experiences. We often don't have places where we can be completely alone. Even if we're driving in our car, we worry people are looking in the windows or recognizing us through their own passage through Earth. And if you share a house with people, you still feel like, well, at least I have a home, but it's not like a place where I can just be loud and naked and emotional. Like, I gotta also consider the earth around me. But you close those doors, and especially if you do have that space to yourself, and you get to be as loud as the human body can be, or as emotional as it wants to get, or, if you have vulnerabilities with regards to expression, whether it's singing or, the types of words, or the types of energies that might be used, what an incredible gift. Even if it's just stepping into a closet or closing a door to a room and being like, I could. The body craves it. And unfortunately, once you show it that it can, it's like, can we do this a lot? Because there's so much to process all the time. Why don't we do this more? Because this is helping me to get through all of the challenges of life as well, and then pour them into work, pour them into art, but mostly just pour them out of yourself so that you can process and understand them a little better and be ready for more, be ready for new, because as we know, change is the only constant. So to stay stagnant is to accept a small death, in petit mort, as the French would say. But don't look that up, because they're actually talking about something else.
Oh, no. My
no,
goodness.
look it up. Incognito. What does le petit mort mean in French?
As a French-speaking Canadian myself, I won't be in need of that dictionary.
Ah, bien sûr, mon ami.
Well, Brendan, it is clear to me that your teaching style, I assume this, but it remains clear to me that it seems to be about instilling that remembrance of playing and being okay to play and being forthright with your emotions and getting in touch with yourself, hopefully not in that way. I'd actually...
You should love yourself in all ways, even if it's self-touch.
Noted. I would like to hop along on this question then, because I think in a single question, you've actually answered two as far as I'm aware. But I'd actually like to you used a word challenge earlier, and I'd like to ask you then, in the context of when you're working with students, and I suspect that you're going to, you'll see what I'm saying here. How would you describe a challenging student?
Mostly what I find challenging, or what can get frustrating, is when a student is just really mired in their cerebral aspect of performing. And that's completely understandable. I was a very cerebral actor for a long time, so it's not that I don't understand it. What I guess what I notice as a challenge or a frustration is that I don't know how long their journey is going to be before that wall starts to erode, and that they can be more than just their academic approach to the work.
Mhm.
And it's not for me to dictate. All I will do is try to remind them that, that kind of falsehood, that kind of like desire to do good work, as I often say, is usually what makes it feel false, feel fake, feel forced. And while you're absolutely allowed to practice and fake and fake it till you make it and all those types of things to like see what's possible, in the rehearsal process, what we're really trying to achieve eventually in those performance takes is, are you ready to be vulnerably in the moment? Are you ready to be present? Because being present is so different than thinking ahead and planning and trying to control it. And as I'm a trauma kid, so I learned to try to control as many environments as I could because that was the only way that you thought you could feel safe. And the thought of it is only really a part of it. The thought of it is fine. But the truth of it is that we're supposed to get good at going with the flow. But when you're broken, when you're in pain, or when you're healing, it's really hard to accept that. You'll fight it all the time. I think about the river analogy, or even Bruce Lee's "Be water, my friend," because the river analogy is that there are supposed to be banks on the river. Is that uncomfortable for the debris floating in the water? Sure, I'm bouncing off those walls as well. And if I am rigid, then I might break upon those. But if I am going with the flow and accepting of the flow, then even though it might be uncomfortable, I will get to new waters. And I can't tell a student that they should just be that, but I encourage them to learn how to try to see what it's like to just trust. Trust more, plan and perform. Plan in rehearsals and do all of that work. And then when it comes to performing, trust. Just trust a little more than last time. Trust that you're going to be okay. Trust that it doesn't have to go the way it went in rehearsal for it to be good. And in fact, the more that it feels like it's spontaneous, organic, weird, and wild, usually you'll be quite surprised that if you keep with it, if you try to survive that and go with the flow of that, you'll come out thinking some real magic happened there. And the artist will come out of that going, I actually felt things. I actually was affected by that. I was wondering when those types of things would happen for me because I've always been a really cerebral actor. And you go, isn't it wild? Isn't it interesting? And so I teach improv too, right? I teach acting for film and television. I try to teach these things across the mediums of expression because a challenging student or a frustrating student is usually one that is just resisting that longer than I would hope that they would. But it's absolutely their path. And eventually, I hope that they'll also go, wow, I wish it didn't take me so long, but at least now I'm there. It took me a lot longer than I would have hoped too. So I think that's the challenge that I think we all, internally and with those externally, we're always trying to maybe just help remind, you're better when you're present. You're better than when you're planning. You're better than when you're controlling. You're better when you're present. But it's completely understandable why so many of us try to outthink the problems. And for some practical applications, that can be helpful. But to be authentic, to be representing truth, eventually you're going to have to be brave and trust. And then when you survive that a couple of times, you go, I actually can do that more often. And hopefully you'll just continue to lean into that trust and become the you that has been waiting to be there.
That was beautiful, Brendan. Like,
Oh, okay.
seriously. Seriously, thank you for sharing that and your thought process along the way of it. Like, I can admit that I think I still myself am extremely cerebral. There's this idea that there's got to be the right way to do this. This is what they're looking for. But yeah, you get wrapped up in your head and you think, okay, no, that wasn't it. And you just start deleting your takes over and over until you settle on one that maybe you're just too tired to do the same thing to it. So you send it off. But by then, have you lost all the magic? Are you just frustrated with it? And you said, okay, I'm done. I have to try something else now. I get that. And thank you for sharing that with everyone here.
And I think as any human that's trying to understand, if I can tangent for just a moment, is that, we do have that thought. What do they want? I want to succeed. I want to please them. I want to win. I want to get the gig. I want to do it right, whatever. And that's an understandable and, in fact, really helpful perspective for one take. There should absolutely be that pursuit of, do I know enough about what I've experienced of other booking talent, of other projects that I've been exposed to, that I have a sense as to what is being asked for. Because, yeah, we should have that intelligence. And that should be like, that's often my A take, right? Okay, I think I know what they're going for. I'll do it through my brand. I'll do it through my personhood. And of course, it's going to be tainted by that. But, you know, that's kind of for them. That's my A take. And then my B take is often, what would it be like if I didn't worry about such things? What if I could create a different set of 5 Ws, the who, what, when, where, and why? What if I could have a different intention or a different goal? What if I could showcase a whole different way that this could go? It's probably quote unquote wrong, but is it wrong to show them how much more I can give them? Almost never, because they will often come back and say, we're not actually looking for your A or your B, but what they did teach us was how enticed we are to work with you. So you'll often get that, right? I talk about the 3 ways you get a job. One is you somehow matched the casting director or client's imagined voice in their head. And how do you ever plan for that? You can't plan for that. You can hope. You can go, I think you want this. And they go, that's exactly what I want. Okay, once in a while. 10%, maybe less. And then 80 to 90%, you surprise them. You give them something that they weren't expecting. Even if they think it's wrong, they go, that person commits. That person's interesting. That person is playful. And I want to work with a person like that. And that's your 80 to 90% booking ratio. The other 10%, if there is that, it's just when the first person that they chose can't do it. And they go, you were also one of our first choices. Can you do it? And you're like, well, that's nice, because you never find out that you're in the top 3 if the first person that they call takes the job. No one's like, hey, just wanted to let you know, you almost got the job. Bye. They don't do that. So these are great things to explore.
I'm glad they don't do that. I would hate that. That would make me go, oh my God.
But, you know, like when I was, you know, doing a lot of auditions and I wasn't hearing anything for weeks or months, I was starting to think that it was me. So it was actually quite helpful when a casting director told me, oh, we keep bringing you out because you're always in our top selects. It's after that, you know, like we can try to you know, push who we think that the client should work with, but at the end of the day, it's the client's choice. And it's not like you were lesser than. They had a few great options and they chose not you. It wasn't about you. They just chose someone. And so when they told me that, and they gave me some, I guess, confirmation that the work I had been doing was good, because of course every actor worries, am I doing good work? Am I good? All that kind of stuff.
Touch?
Yeah. Or, yeah, like, do I even know what I'm doing, right? And I think back to that touch point on challenging students or challenging artists, it's that they'll just get stuck. They'll just get stuck in the idea that they have to be something to be good, instead of allowing themselves to be more themselves, and it just flourishes. The good just comes as a byproduct.
Thank you, sir. I mean, I can see what you're saying about appreciate. It's the shortlisting effect. You're like, you know what? I was good enough to be considered. I'm not doing something wrong. It's just it wasn't right this time. I hear you.
It's not that it wasn't right. You absolutely were right. You were right. So was someone else. So was someone else. And they had to make a hard decision of, we have a lot of right possibilities here. And it's actually a really amazing thing when you get to know those things, because you just have to keep doing that. And, you know, 1 in 10 or 1 in 30 or 1 in 50 of those, you know, you're doing competent work. I talk about the good enough, right? We've talked about that in class. Just send an audition that's good enough for you. It doesn't have to be great or perfect, because that doesn't exist. As long as it's good enough. If you're not mad at it, send it. If you're mad at it, don't send it. It could just be practice. It can just be a rehearsal. It can just be training. And if you really like it, keep that audition and put it somewhere in your files, so you've got like a really good representation of, maybe here I can send a sample to somebody. It's an audition I did that I'm proud of. I don't have a demo for that medium yet. I don't need one, but here's a bit of insight in how I like to do that work. What a great gift that you give yourself.
Oh, I like that you mentioned demos, because that kind of segues into my next question. So rather than me being a brick through a glass window, I'm going to use that. Thanks for that. You bailed me out. Brendan, when it comes to students and their progression through their journey, is there a milestone that they should reach before they come to you? Are you beginner friendly? Are you intermediates and onwards because of complexities? What should someone do, if anything, before they meet up with you?
I suppose, always tried to make myself accessible to the absolute beginner. I mean, I just launched 401, the new semester for voice actors on closing credits. So I do deal with, the intermediate to the advanced level of student or, career VA as well. I think in order to be ready to, ask for my partnership in your journey, I'm just I'm just hoping that you're wanting to be brave, that you're wanting to be more you. Like that's the turning corner for most of what I try to imbue into my teaching style. I'm not here to break you down. I'm not here to tell you to be like me. I'm not trying to make you an actor of my discipline. I'm really trying to understand who you are and then like encourage that and support that. And, a lot of my comments are going to be a mix of accolades and constructive criticism because I want you to know what's going well so that you can stop worrying about everything. Because I would worry about everything. And I would just think that everything needed my attention all the time instead of starting to trust that, hey, maybe that part is okay. Maybe that part's already strong. Where are your deficits? Where are the weaknesses that you want to work on? Which tongue twisters do challenge you? Do those more. It's not about which ones challenge me. It's about learning for you where the challenges and opportunities lie. So to come to me and say, I know nothing, can we start? 100%. Because I want you to be able to have that beginning of a journey that is safe and playful and that really is to the betterment of you as a person, not just as a VA, but hey, are you coming here because you want to be a pro VA in like a timeline? That's really hard to accomplish.
Yeah.
But if you want to come here and get better at expressing yourself, and that's going to be, helpful around the kitchen table, the boardroom table, all the places that you get to express yourself. And as a byproduct, you get to audition more and maybe even start booking and start realizing that you're a really good problem solver and you're a really good connector for audiences and listeners. What an empowering thing that's going to be. But it doesn't have to be from the booking that you start to have that benefit. You can start having that benefit by just putting the work into you and actually not being so at odds with your expression anymore, which I think so many of us are. We're afraid to express ourselves. We're afraid to speak out. We're afraid to use our voice. We're afraid to be emotional or energetic. And that's usually for very good reasons. But what you deserve to be is able to use this tool, this vessel that you exist in, to its better abilities, to your better ability, and to become the you that you've been waiting to be. And I think that's for everybody.
Thank you, Brendan. Funny story. I had someone on LinkedIn reach out to me just out of nowhere. I didn't know this guy.
Yeah.
And he seemed to like what I was doing. And he was asking me, kind of like a prospective student asking me. And I don't classify myself as a teacher. I haven't put in like real concentrated thought on becoming a coach, a teacher, etc. And he asked me, how do I get started? And I was happy to be able to point him towards closing credits and casting call club to begin on the same route that I did. But I like what you have said here. I like your answer more than what I gave him because I wasn't happy with mine. I like now being able to give him the answer. Well, you want to first figure out if you're really ready to play, ready to let yourself just have a bit of fun. Because if you're in this just if you're still trapped in your head, well, you got to first get out of your head.
Sure.
Give that a try. I like that. Thank you for sharing that. The next time, or maybe if he even gets back to me later today, I'll be able to give him that too. And that's going to be coming from you. Oh my God, this one feels great. On the principle of one person teaching another person. Here comes my 7th question. Brendan, I have a segment I like to do on here where we kind of pass the baton and I ask you, is there anyone who you have learned from recently and has helped you realize areas you could grow in? Anyone who's helped you out with that recently? Even at like a convention or something, a fellow,
Yeah,
a
I mean,
peer.
I'm just thinking back to Odafest this past weekend, and it was such a wonderful opportunity because I get to meet VAs from all over the world at each of these conventions. And, I guess I've had imposter syndrome for a long time, and that certainly has waned in the last few years. COVID was a really enlightening, really challenging time, but it also helped me cement a lot of my, I suppose, my understanding of me. I've been at this since 2003. I've got 2 decades plus in the industry. I've got some really neat credits, and I've got some really great stories and opportunities. And so when I am sitting on stage with other VAs that are from like LA and Texas and New York and things like that, I I often find that what I really appreciate about them is that they're often, they're younger, they're on, the Genshin Impact, or they're on some product that my kids think is cool, and I'm kind of like the fatherly dude that's, on some projects that, while I'm still grateful that they have a lot of fan attention, they're getting older, and for me, I often feel like, oh, maybe I'm kind of um, one step out of this. But what's been wonderful is that when we get kind of past the shallow questions, um, we really start to recognize that the discipline of expression, and in our case, voice acting, really attracts humans that are quite interested in the deep and difficult thoughts that we all go through
Yeah.
if we've got the wherewithal and the time. And so if you get up there and people want to talk to you about like, what was your favorite character to play? And that's fine. All that kind of stuff is fine. But what becomes more interesting is what excites you about bringing these characters to life, because the stories are often a reinforcement of, it allowed me to share a bit of my truth, some of my authenticity, but through their lens, through their vessel. And when people say that it mattered, it doesn't just feel like, oh, that was a job that I did that people liked. It feels like they're giving me confirmation that I'm worthy of expressing myself and being having a vested interest in learning and understanding. As Carl Sagan would say, we're all sentient stardust trying to understand itself, and we get to do this through a really playful medium. So I don't have necessarily that one specific thing that just jumps out at me, but what I get to do is keep having these confirmations everywhere I go, that not just the fans are saying it means something when a character expresses themselves and I feel like they know me or that they know a part of me. And it also means something so profound for us, the artists, to say, I got to put a bit of my truth and my challenge or my understanding through the challenges I've had into the work. And that's been to my betterment too. That was a place to put it so that it could be again processed and maybe understood even more as we all go on this long, tumultuous journey of endless challenge, endless, difficulties, and also immense rewards based on our understanding of how difficult things can be. And I'm really just quite enamored with that. So I guess I'd say never stop listening. I'm a person that gets to talk a lot. People listen to me. That's fantastic and interesting. And listening more now that I'm kind of through that proving myself phase where I got to talk all the time and make sure I get all my ideas out. That's been fine. That's been great. But now listening to how many other people are having a very similar experience, expressing themselves through art, through, it's a job, but the gratitude. It's been incredible to move out of the fear and into the gratitude that you can just get better at this. You can keep doing this in the ways that work for you. And yeah, you can't tell people to cast you, but you get to keep being an expressive person. And sometimes that's going to have huge unseen benefits and rewards that just keep trying.
It's funny. It's like you can almost retroactively learn through the people who are on the journey that you yourself are traversing. That's really cool, man. I'm
Yeah.
I get the same kind of vibe when, I hear about the people in LA, people in New York, and I'm like, oh, I'm just a Canadian up here, not part of them, their big cities there. But it's true that when I'm when I hear them speaking about their roles and I stop and get out of that bubble and think, yeah, that's kind of where I'm at right now. I'm like, yeah, you're right. We do think those deeper thoughts, and it's more than just a surface level. Brendan, thank you for giving us so many of these insightful comments of yours today. I'm getting close to rounding out this interview, but we did save what is often the fun question for the end. It's a classic. What would you say is the most important thing that a student can learn from you? I love the pauses after. I love when a coach has a
Well,
pause after.
I mean, I think it probably will come back down to what I've said it before, and it's always kind of well received, is that you're just supposed to be you. You're supposed to be you, and that's what's hard. You don't want to be you because you think it's broken. You think it's bad. You think it's deserving of the punishment that it's incurred in your life. And that's a relationship we all go through. And I hope that everyone gets to a point where they don't just begrudge their past, but they actually start to recognize, wow, that was hard. But I am the product. I am the product of all of that. I have learned from that. I have suffered from that. But because I understand that better now, I'm a grown up. I can look at my various aspects through life where I'm like, that shouldn't have happened to that young person, that little kid, that young human just trying. And it shouldn't have. But what I can do is I can with love accept that, accept them in those difficult moments, bring them back into me and say, that was not for naught. That was not for nothing. That was learning. That was lesson. That was understanding. And because you have that difficult thing, you can start to reframe it as, I got to survive that. And that has given me so much to be able to recognize it in others, recognize the challenge and strife and pain that others are going through, and just remind them that it is hard. And it was supposed to be hard. And with your perseverance, you're going to eventually be okay with it. You might even start to be grateful that you've had this complicated life that's allowed you to be a really complicated you, because that complicated you is going to be brilliant. But you got to start wanting it, or it's going to just stay stagnant. You're going to have to want to walk through and into the betterment where you can start to say, I'm glad I survived that. I'm glad I know that, because I wouldn't wish it on anyone, but it was absolutely paramount for me to be who I want to be and how I want to show up for the people in my life. I'm really, really grateful now that I've had a lot of course corrections in my life, and I probably will have more, and I'm understandably intimidated by that. I have fear that my wonderful, love-filled life will change. But all I can do is trust that if I can survive it, then there will come a day when I say, I guess that's why that happened. I guess that's what it was for. And as invaluable as that information will be, I'll also have to make peace with the fact that we're all going to have very difficult paths. But what we can do for each other is try to show up for each other and recognize it in each other so that no one walks it alone. And if we're not alone, we can really do anything. And so that's what I'll continue to try to do.
Everybody listening, you roll back to the start of this section and you play that back again, because you're gonna want to make sure you keep that up here, because that goes beyond voice acting and any of this other stuff. That's real life stuff there. So you get that ingrained. Brendan, seriously, thank you for that. And thank you for being here. I'm gonna hop back to that YouTube. Tell me all about those links or something. You got your socials or something?
Yeah, before I do that, and you guys can obviously Google Brendan Hunter, Brendan, just like the traditional Irish spelling. But on Sunday, May 12th, Mother's Day, we launched the trailer for Beyond the Oaks, and I'm going to be directing it. It's my first video game that I'm directing. If you get a chance, it's on Kickstarter. We're going to be doing quite a lot of promotional launches. There's going to be a playable demo that is premiering at GameCon 2024 here in Canada, but that will be available internationally as well, and that's just next month. This is really exciting for me because, I was a producer of feature films about 15 years ago. Financially, that really stopped me from being able to do it because it's really hard to make money on $1 million independent feature films. And that was really devastating because I really thought that somehow it was going to work. And we were so, I don't need to get into the details, but we had a successful product, and it wasn't successful enough to pay us back. And so I had to change tact. But what that change of tact did was it made me pour myself into being the product that I could sell to conventions and that I could work with clients. And instead of having a movie I had to pay off, I could use me as the product. And that taught me so much about being a good guest and being a good coach, being a better VA. And now I get to take some of the work that I've been doing as a coach and as a teacher of voice acting and apply it to the director's chair where I'm employing, fellow Canadian voice actors that, some of them are really great. Like Caitlin Medrick was on Dragonball with me, and as well as Arthur out of Toronto. Zoe Slusar played Kid Goku to some fame. Mark Meir from the Mass Effect games. It's an incredible team that we're putting together, and I get to employ my colleagues, my friends. I get to help a game be better than what it could have been without, this level of talent and my level of care for it to be all it can be. So I hope you'll go and check out Beyond the Oaks. I'm extremely excited, and it's the beginning of a new chapter where, yeah, I was a producer for a long time, and I'm going to help produce content, especially here in Canada, that goes to the world stage, that is, going to be probably pretty big splash for pretty small projects, because we don't have the AAA money, we don't have the big, marquee names, but we have the talent, we've got the passion. So I'll just leave that there. Of course, go to brendanhunter.com. I'm on all the things. I'm kind of okay at all the things, but I'm getting better. And if anybody ever wants, I'm pretty accessible. I'm trying to make myself a part of this community that you can just reach out to with a question. You can just message me and I'll write back. And hopefully that might just be the prompt that you need to see if you want to try a little harder in the way that you are becoming you. And if it's in voice acting, cool. I know a little bit about that. And as Robert has pointed out, I've been trying to understand this thing called life, R.I.P. Prince, and we all deserve to. So if you are an artist or you are a person with an artful soul, then I bet you are too. I bet you're trying to understand why life is so complicated. And maybe I'll just leave you with the thought that if we are the universe trying to know itself, then it was absolutely supposed to be complicated. And your experience matters to all of us. And if we are all one, then I really see you and I appreciate you trying. Because maybe by you going through it, we will learn that lesson. And not so many people will have to go through that same lesson. Because that's what humans tend to do. We have to go through lessons over and over again to learn it. And I think we're getting smarter, especially our new generations that have come up in a really different world. I grew up in the 80s. That was neat. A lot of my friends now are born after 2000, and I can't believe that I get the opportunity to know such young people with such depth and grace and humility, because this is an experiment on a cosmic scale. And if you get to pour it into some art once in a while, that's rad as hell. And if it's just for you to start to realize that your experiential node on this planet is as valuable as anyone else's, I don't know. That sounds pretty great. That should be celebrated. And so I hope that you will. Take care of you. Self-love is taking care of you so that you can love yourself better and love those you care about better. And isn't that what it's all about?
Man, I can't follow that, man. All right, I'm just going to tack the bookend to this and say the following. Thank you, Brendan Hunter, and thank you, everybody, for being here. Want to say goodbye to them one more time, man?
My absolute pleasure. Thank you, everyone. You guys treat me with such kindness, and as a scared young man who didn't know where he would end up and what his place was and why he felt like he was failing all the time, I feel so accepted. I really appreciate your kindness and your generosity, and the way that you guys let me be the emotional and outlandish person that I get to be is so meaningful, because I think it's making all the difference in me being able to imbue that into my teaching, into my art, and of course into my interpersonal relationships. This is an incredible thing we get to do, and I think this community really shows up for each other. So if that's ever of interest to you and you think you're the only weirdo in the village, well, come to our international online village and you'll see that, wow, there I am, there I am, there I am. These are my people. They just weren't in my village, and we are here, and we look forward to knowing you.